profound an experience it is that a man would be deemed by his church to be the Holy Father, the representative of God on earth. What kind of crushing weight would that be? What kind of humility would it require? And a story began to spin its way into my life. I have a friend who's a devout Catholic, and he won't take communion because he can't make perfect contrition. I'm not a Catholic, by the way. I grew up a Baptist, but he can't fulfill the requirements to take communion because he can't honestly say he's going to refuse to stop living in sin with the woman he's with, who he has a child with. So he's cut off from communion. And no matter how much I say to him about the Protestant view of none of us deserve God's love, we're saved only by grace, it doesn't penetrate his sense of obligation and requirement and insufficiency to take communion. And I began to think about, what if you had a pope who was absolutely committed to the reformation of the church, but he believed that maybe God was not going to bless his efforts unless he became a better man, and to become a better man, he had to own his own sins. And his deepest sin, his greatest guilt, pertains to a young woman who was the child of one of the Swiss guards who tried to protect the popes when John Paul II was shot 4 times in the stomach in Vatican Square. Other popes have died under mysterious circumstances. And the idea that these two people come together on the night when assassins stormed the Vatican to kill the Pope, and they have to try to escape through the bowels of the Vatican while they're confronting their darkest secrets and their darkest fears and faith. That just sounded like the kind of movie I want to do. And for the first time in my career, I felt comfortable in saying to people who have the financial means to invest in movies, that I was willing to let them invest. As one of my sons said, I could never let friends invest in movies because it would destroy me the sense of responsibility to get their money back to them. But in this, I had every confidence that this was the kind of movie the audience throughout the world really wants to see, the kind of theme that pertains to everyone, that it would be the classic thing we want, a hit movie that really meant something. And that's the movie I'm preparing now. Planning to shoot in Rome in September. Have an incredible team assembled. Still assembling other people to do it. But that's what's right in my sights right now.
Well, in 1,000 years, that isn't a plot that I would have guessed.
Well, Jordan, here's another thing that pertains, and it's another of the reasons I'm so enriched by your experience, by your journey, which I feel is just starting. And it's that when you start to direct, there's the metaphor for me is like you're crawling into a pipe, and that pipe is 18 months long, and you're going to crawl through sludge and sometimes even sewage, and there's no turning around, and it's all on your shoulders, and you have to keep going and to stay connected with what I need to stay connected with to survive, which begins with my family. It's extremely difficult. You're in a war, you're in a battle, and I've done a number of movies about fighting, about men who lead other men in battle, and it's consuming. It's all consuming. General Moore, the man that We Were Soldiers was about, Mel Gibson portrayed him. He led the air cavalry in the largest battle in Vietnam. And he loved his family profoundly. But from the moment he left Fort Benning, Georgia, to go to Vietnam till the day he returned more than a year later, he never wrote a single letter except to one daughter. He wrote her a letter back because she had written him. But other than that, he never called his wife. And he loved his wife with every fiber of his being. But he felt he had to keep every second focused on how he kept his men alive. And in that sense of how responsibility can crush us is profound for me.
Well, I've suggested to people quite constantly, and generally it's been a suggestion that people take to heart, that the sustaining meaning in life is to be found through the adoption of responsibility. But that is the flip side of it, is that there's always the possibility that you pile on too much and that you don't manage to move forward under the load. And that's a danger. And I've seen people who are talented fall prey to that, talented and hardworking fall prey to that. And it is definitely a great advantage to be surrounded by people that love you and to have a family and all of that, so that you can take some comfort when you have the opportunity to do that. So that screenplay that you're describing, that's going to be, you said that'll start filming in the fall, assuming that we defeat COVID and all of that.
Yes.
And so what drew you to the idea, in some sense, of putting the Pope in what sounds like an action movie? I mean, I have a friend who writes action novels, and he's quite interested in using all of the elements, plot development in particular, but also character development, that are part of mass entertainment, in the thriller genre, which is very close to the superhero genre, I suppose, to investigate thoughtful matters in depth, to marry what's entertaining and gripping, which always has an archetypal element, otherwise it wouldn't be entertaining and gripping, to something that's serious. And I suppose, and so it sounds like there's something like that. Well, I could see that thread running through all of your work, the marriage of mass attraction, which is certainly necessary for the success of a movie, but also the exploration of deeper themes and ethical themes.
Yes, and I feel that one without the other is pale. An abstract discussion of values is interesting to me intellectually, but I want to know how it's defined.